Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Friday, March 15th. I'm Jonathan Ahl. St. Louis has roughly 20,000 vacant properties spread across the city, and responding to this challenge will require a fair amount of cash and investment.
Capital funds, incentives, tax credits, all of those are tools that can be used, and we need to think about where the need is.
St. Louis Public Radio's Eric Schmid looks at how vacancy affects the city and how it can be addressed. That's coming up on The Gateway. A prominent St. Louis area journalist is retiring from the profession to try to run against GOP Congresswoman Ann Wagner. St. Louis Public Radio's Jason Rosenbaum has more on Ray Hartman's entry into the 2nd Congressional District race.
Hartman previously owned the Riverfront Times and served as a panelist on 9 Network's Donnybrook for 37 years. But he's leaving the show to run against John Keeney in the 2nd District Democratic primary. Hartman says he'll be a better choice than Wagner, especially because of his support for abortion rights.
Women's freedom is clearly on the ballot. And in a race like this in the 2nd District, if I manage to win the primary, there'll be a real clear-cut choice on that issue, which I think is really second to none.
The district includes St. Louis, St. Charles, Franklin, and Warren counties. I'm Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio.
St. Louis leaders used 314 Day yesterday to share how the city is pushing resources to transform areas that experienced acute disinvestment in the past. The St. Louis Development Corporation launched 3 new programs to help small businesses, minority and women-owned contractors, and first-time home buyers. St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones says a lot of the funding comes from the American Rescue Plan Act.
It takes a while to spend federal money, and these were programs that have not existed before in our city. We've had to stand up 14 new programs in order to spend this money in the right way and to make sure that it gets in the right hands.
Jones says all of the ARPA dollars the city received have been appropriated. She says that means now the city can focus on pushing that money into neighborhoods that need the investment. The Missouri Senate passed a 150-page education bill yesterday. As St. Louis Public Radio's Sarah Kellogg reports, the legislation has components that both parties advocated for.
When first introduced, the legislation by Senator Andrew Koenig contained just a growth of the state's K-12 tax credit scholarship program. Now, the bill also includes an expansion of charter schools into Boone County, an increase in teacher pay through state statute, and a new way of calculating the state's school funding formula, which factors in school enrollment. Though there were items in the bill that Democrats were advocating for, Senator Lauren Arthur said their party remains against the, quote, privatization of education.
We strongly oppose vouchers and the expansion of charters. We'll say there was a lot in the bill that made it very tempting to vote for.
No Democrat voted for the bill. The legislation now goes to the Missouri House. In Jefferson City, I'm Sarah Kellogg, St. Louis Public Radio.
Soccer fans visiting City Park will soon pay more sales tax. The Port Authority Commission approved a 1% increase at a meeting yesterday morning. St. Louis City SC officials say they plan to use it for what were unexpected construction and water treatment costs. Jason Tyne is the chief operating officer of City SC. He says the soccer club has paid more than $20 million to address a newly uncovered spring.
I think every parcel was at one time a dry cleaner, a gas station, or something along those lines. And so underground water is, there was some pollutants and some contaminants in there. MSD required that we clean that water before it was discharged into the sewer system.
Tyne says engineers treat more than 100,000 gallons of contaminated water daily. All in-stadium purchases and parking costs will soon have a 12.7% sales tax. According to new census estimates, the St. Louis metropolitan area lost more than 3,200 people during the year ending July 1st, 2023. The population decline caused the region to drop from 21st largest U.S. metro area to the 23rd, now behind Charlotte and Orlando. St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson reports.
St. Louis University demographer Ness Sandoval says the regional population decline did not happen overnight. He says decades of racial discrimination caused families to migrate to other cities for better opportunities.
Cities like Charlotte, Houston, and Dallas, Orlando, those cities do not have the type of concentrated disadvantage that St. Louis has. If you're thinking about raising your child in a racially integrated neighborhood, those neighborhoods are fairly easy to find in those other metropolitan regions.
Sandoval says families are also attracted to entertaining cities, and regional leaders should heavily market the area as such. On a positive note, the census data shows more international families are moving to the region. I'm Andrea Henderson, St. Louis Public Radio.
Hey, it's Marissa Ann Lewis-Thompson, your afternoon newscaster here at St. Louis Public Radio. Keep podcasts like The Gateway thriving by becoming a member of St. Louis Public Radio today. Your monthly donation ensures that your community stays informed and has access to fact-based local and national news. Give right now at stlpr.org, and thanks.
Late last month, 7 dilapidated multifamily homes along Kingshighway near Interstate 64 met the wrecking ball to make way for a new apartment development. The homes sat empty and boarded up for years as the parcels they sat on revolved through different owners. St. Louis Public Radio's Eric Schmid reports what these properties can tell us more broadly about vacancy in St. Louis.
A steady flow of traffic on Kingshighway passes this demolition crew as it combs through the rubble of a 2-story building. Heavy machinery crunches over old brick and glass and loads larger pieces of debris into a dump truck that then hauls it away. Ward 9 Alderman Michael Browning represents this part of Forest Park Southeast and says many of these former homes sat unoccupied for more than a decade. He adds they hadn't seen renovation since the 1960s, and starting in the mid-2000s, they bounced between a few owners who didn't invest in them either.
Just a really cynical strategy of demo by neglect.
This scenario, where a developer scoops up land but doesn't do anything with it, is familiar to Tori Park, who directs the St. Louis Vacancy Collaborative.
Ultimately, it's about private owners who purchase land or purchase a building with the idea that, they can turn it into a profit. It's speculative.
She says the same situation has plagued North St. Louis, which has the overwhelming majority of the city's roughly 20,000 vacant properties. The newly cleared land in Forest Park Southeast won't stay empty. The new owner, Kansas City-based North Point Development, plans to build around 150 housing units on the site. North Point's Jennifer George says the company hopes to break ground sometime this fall.
We really find it to be a great opportunity just because of the continued demand for housing in and around the hospital campus and Washington University Medical Campus.
George says there are also strong connections to bike and pedestrian routes, as well as Metrolink. Park, with the Vacancy Collaborative, says these assets aren't spread evenly across St. Louis, and that makes addressing vacancy complicated.
The north side has less of an infrastructure. It doesn't have the same kinds of amenities. You've got food deserts, just lack of, banking institutions.
Part of this was by design. Park says St. Louis's Central Corridor historically received more economic development incentives and investment attention than North St. Louis and pockets of South City like Dutchtown and Gravois Park. But there are ways to address it now. She says the city has a chunk of cash from the American Rescue Plan Act and RAM settlement.
Capital funds, incentives, tax credits. All of those are tools that can be used, and we need to think about where the need is.
St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones agrees.
That is equity, taking a look at where resources are needed and applying those resources into neighborhoods and places that haven't seen investment in decades.
Any long-term revitalization will take time, though, says Linda Wynn, the executive director of the Community Builders Network of Metro St. Louis.
When it comes to neighborhood change, I think to remind folks that it does not happen overnight, that there is a strategy to it and there is intentionalities to it.
Wynn says Forest Park Southeast wasn't always a magnet for development. It lost population in recent decades, too. She says the area took control by adopting a clear development strategy years before the neighborhood really started to rebound.
There is a form-based code that says, hey, if you want to build on this block, on this lot, you should be building X. And that's something that the neighborhood had to say 10 years ago, right? So that's the power they have.
She says these kinds of plans, which other parts of St. Louis have too, can help ensure new construction fits the vision neighborhood residents have for their community. Wynn adds these plans are a solid starting point, but it's also important that neighborhoods have an active role in considering how new development may address vacancy in their boundaries. I'm Eric Schmid, St. Louis Public Radio.
Our Brian Moline edited that report. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. Today's episode produced by Aula Kuziz. I'm Jonathan Aul, and from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this has been The Gateway.
Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, a design-build company committed to remodeling the right way. Visit callmosby.com to get project inspiration for any room of your house.